Tonight's reflection is about the old Zen koan of one hand clapping, though the point here is not to solve it. The point is to let it quiet the mind in the way some gentle questions do, not by offering an answer, but by loosening the mind's usual habits around answer itself. Imagine a quiet room, a low lamp, a single hand lifted in the dimness, no dramatic gesture, no audience, only one hand, and the soft impossibility of the question. What is the sound of one hand clapping? The mind hears the phrase and immediately begins to arrange itself around ordinary expectations. A clap belongs to two hands. A sound belongs to contact. The thought wants structure. It wants cause and effect in the familiar order. The koan interrupts that order very gently. It does not shout. It only removes one expected piece and leaves the mind listening in a different way. This difference is useful at bedtime. Bedtime is not helped by questions that sharpen the mind into argument. It is helped by questions that dissolve the mind's hard edges. This koan can do that when handled softly. If it is treated as a puzzle, it becomes bright and restless. If it is treated as an atmosphere, it becomes spacious. So let it become spacious. One hand, quiet room, night air, the ear listening not for a clever result, but for what happens when the usual pattern is left incomplete. Perhaps the first thing that happens is silence, not empty silence, not sterile silence, only the silence that becomes audible when a familiar expectation has nowhere to land. The mind pauses, the room pauses, the hand remains where it is, and in that pause, listening changes. Most listening moves quickly toward naming. A sound of the window, a sound in the floor, a distant car, a breath, a settling sheet. But here the listening cannot name so quickly. It listens into something softer than usual. It begins to notice the field around sound, the quiet in which sound appears, the almost sounds that surround the hour. The room at night is full of these. A floorboard settling, cloth shifting against cloth, the faintest movement of air, the breath passing the lips, the pillow receiving the head. None of these is dramatic, yet all of them belong to a kind of listening that is more restful than the daytime habit of sorting and identifying. The koan gently guides attention there, not to the answer, but to the listening itself. One hand lifted in the room, one ear listening, one breath. The scene becomes very small, and that smallness helps. Large questions are often too bright for the close of day. This small question, impossible but quiet, acts differently. It takes the usual machinery of thought and lets it idle. It gives the mind something it cannot quite grasp in its ordinary way, and because it cannot grasp it, it may stop gripping for a while. That stopping is part of the gift. The koan is sometimes described as something meant to overturn conceptual thought. For bedtime, the softer way to say that is simpler. It lowers the mind's insistence on tidy explanation. It lets the ear rest in an open space where the world does not have to line up in the usual manner. This is very close to what sleep asks for too. Sleep does not arrive by perfect explanation. It arrives when many inner explanations fall away. The day may still be in the mind somewhere, but the need to account for it loosens. The hand may now lower and rest. The question remains, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Now it is less a question than a room to sit in. A room with dim walls and soft air. A room where silence is not an absence, but a texture. The silence after the question. The silence around the breath. The silence already gathered in the corners. The mind may begin to notice that this silence is not truly empty. It is full of waiting, but waiting without strain, full of small presences, full of the nearness of the body and the softness of the hour. The koan has not produced an answer, yet it has changed the quality of attention, and perhaps that is enough. Enough for the night, enough for the ear, enough for the mind to stop making so much of itself. If one listens long enough, even the phrase itself grows lighter. One hand, one room, one breath, one listening, nothing to complete, nothing to prove, nothing to win by answering correctly. This matters because so many waking habits are built around correctness. Bedtime needs another habit, not correctness but gentleness, not solution but soft attention, not grasping but easing into what cannot be fully grasped by ordinary means. The one hand becomes a companion for that easing. The room may now be imagined even more simply. The lamp lower, the wall dim, the blanket drawn a little closer, the hand no longer lifted, only resting lightly against the cover or beside the body. The question still present, but no longer active in the way daytime questions are active. It has become part of the atmosphere. What is the sound of one hand clapping? Not urgent, not demanding, only there, like a pale shape in the dark that does not need approaching. Some questions make the mind hotter. This one, at night, may make it cooler. Because it cannot be finished in the usual way, it invites the mind to stop trying so hard to finish itself, to simply listen, to hear the quiet around the body, to hear the room settling, to hear the breath become rounder and less effortful, to hear perhaps even the absence of the expected answer as a kind of softening. Now the language may grow spare. One hand, quiet room, night listening, breath slowing, again one hand, no ordinary clap, no ordinary answer, only this listening. The listening may now be enough, enough to replace the need for conclusion, enough to leave the mind resting in open space, enough to let silence do what an answer never could. The old koan remains where it is, unresolved and gentle. The room grows darker, the hand grows heavier, the breath keeps its own quiet time, and the mind, no longer pushing toward a result, may lie down inside the unanswered question, and find that what sounded impossible at first has become very simple after all. Not an answer, not a clap, only the soft field of listening itself, wide enough, quiet enough, and open enough for sleep. There is still more quiet inside the koan if one stays with it a little longer. The hand itself becomes less important than the listening it awakens. One hand is only the doorway. Beyond it lies the whole room of hearing. The faint movement of air, the soft settling of fabric, the small hush between breaths, the deeper hush beneath even those. Listening can become almost like lying down, not hunting, not searching, not waiting for a clever turn, only resting in what is already around the ear. This is why the koan is so different from ordinary questions. Ordinary questions pull attention forward toward result. This one lets attention open outward and inward at once. It does not say go there, it says listen here. Listen so softly that the usual machinery of answer grows tired and sets itself down. The room helps with that. The room does not answer. The wall does not answer. The blanket does not answer. The dark does not answer. Yet all of them participate in the quiet field the question reveals. One may even notice how the body begins to understand before thought does. When the question is left unresolved, the shoulders do not have to brace for explanation. The brow does not have to tighten. The jaw may loosen. The ear becomes less an instrument of sorting and more an instrument of receiving. Receiving is the better word tonight. The ear receives. The room receives. The night receives all the small sounds without arranging them into an argument. The mind may learn from that. There are so many nearly inaudible things in a night room. The whisper of cloth when the body turns slightly, the faint sound of air through the nose, the little settling noise of a house cooling into darkness, the silence after each one, which is not really empty at all. Perhaps the one hand points toward that silence after sound, not silence as blankness, but silence as the place where all sound rests. The question removes the expected clap and leaves the listener near that resting place. It is a gentle removal, a subtraction, one less thing, one ear open, one room listening. Again, no answer needed, no result expected, no second hand arriving to complete the picture, only the quiet field where hearing softens into stillness. The body may trust that field more than it realizes. Babies fall asleep in fields of sound. Adults do too, though they often hide this fact from themselves. A little air sound, a little blanket sound, a little distant room sound, and beneath them all the wider quiet that holds the house through the night. The koan escorts attention back into that field. There is comfort in accompaniment. The ear accompanied by soft air. The hand accompanied by blanket warmth. The room accompanied by darkness. The question accompanied by silence instead of answer. Nothing left alone in a harsh way, only joined to what holds it gently. Perhaps this is the deepest bedtime use of the old koan. It gives the mind an unresolved shape gentle enough to sleep beside. Not a problem pressing for completion. Not a thought demanding more thought. Just an open form that invites listening until listening itself becomes drowsy. And so the question may remain once more. One hand, quiet room, night listening, breath slowing, no ordinary answer, no need for one, only the hush after the question, the hush around the body, the hush in which even thought grows quieter, until the mind, having listened as far as it needs to listen, lets the unanswered koan drift into the same dark softness as everything else in the room, and follows it there. One hand, one hush, one soft and listening night, nothing more asked, and nothing more needed than this quiet listening before sleep.